Olivia Mason yawned as she flipped through her textbook. The university library was almost empty at this late hour. Only the soft hum of the air conditioner and the occasional click of her pen broke the silence. Her psychology exam was tomorrow, and she needed to pass it to keep her scholarship. She wasn't a bad student, but she wasn't remarkable either. With average grades and no special talents that stood out, Olivia was just another face in the crowd at Westlake University. At 19 years old, she still wasn't sure what she wanted to do with her life. The clock on the wall showed 11:48 p.m. Olivia rubbed her tired eyes and decided to take a short break. She stood up and stretched, her joints popping after sitting for so long. Maybe some fresh air would help clear her mind. As she walked toward the exit, a strange blue light began to shine through the windows. It grew brighter and brighter until she had to shield her eyes. The floor beneath her feet vibrated, and books fell from shelves around her. "What's happening?" she whispered to the empty room. Before she could react further, the light surrounded her completely, and she felt her body become light, as if she were floating. Then everything went black. Olivia woke up with a pounding headache. She was lying on a smooth, cold surface that felt nothing like the carpet of the library. When she opened her eyes, she gasped. This was definitely not the library. The room was circular with walls that seemed to glow with a soft white light. There were no visible doors or windows. The ceiling curved high above her head, covered in strange symbols that moved and changed as she watched them. "Hello?" Olivia called out, her voice shaking. "Is anyone there?" A section of the wall slid open, and a figure stepped into the room. Olivia scrambled backward until she hit the opposite wall. The creature before her stood on two legs, but was clearly not human. It was tall at least 7 feet, with blue skin that shimmered like it was covered in tiny scales. 6 black eyes were arranged in a circle around what she assumed was its head, and it had 4 long arms that ended in hands with 3 fingers each. "Greetings, human specimen," the creature said. Its voice was oddly musical, with a buzzing quality that made Olivia's ears tingle. "I am Professor Zix Thalen of the Galactic Concordat. You have been selected for cognitive assessment." Olivia's mind raced. This couldn't be real. She must have fallen asleep at her desk. This was just a strange dream caused by too much caffeine and stress. "This is not a dream, Olivia Mason," the alien said, as if reading her thoughts. "You are aboard the research vessel Celestial Inquiry. We have been observing your planet for some time, and now we wish to evaluate humans for potential membership in our alliance." You speak English?" Olivia asked, trying to focus on anything that made sense. "I speak all 6,423 languages currently in use on Earth," Professor Zixthalen said. "It is a simple matter of neural programming." The alien moved closer, and Olivia noticed it was wearing some kind of robe covered in more of those shifting symbols. "Why me?" Olivia managed to ask. "I'm nobody special." "That is precisely why you were chosen," the professor explained. "We needed a random sample, someone with no exceptional abilities or training. You represent the average of your species." Olivia wasn't sure if she should be offended by that. "How long will I be here?" "People will look for me." "Time flows differently." "Here," Professor Zixthalen said. "When you return, barely a moment will have passed on Earth. Now, would you consent to participate in our assessment?" "We do not force subjects." Olivia considered her options. If this was real, and it certainly felt real, then she was representing all of humanity. If she refused, what would these aliens think of humans? What kind of assessment? She asked, cautiously. "A series of puzzles and problems designed to measure cognitive capabilities," the professor explained. "Nothing harmful or invasive. We simply wish to understand how humans think. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia nodded. Okay, I'll do it. The alien's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. Excellent. Please follow me. The wall opened again and Olivia followed Professor Zixthalin into a long corridor. The walls were the same glowing white material, but the floor was transparent, revealing what looked like stars beneath their feet. Olivia tried not to think about how far from Earth she might be. They passed other aliens of different shapes and sizes. Some had tentacles instead of arms, others floated rather than walked, and a few looked almost like giant insects. All of them stopped to stare at Olivia as she passed. Our ship houses representatives from 27 species, Professor Zixthalin explained. Many have never seen a human before. Finally, they reached another doorway that slid open to reveal a smaller room filled with strange equipment. In the center was what looked like a clear glass table surrounded by floating screens. This is where you will be tested, the professor said. Based on our preliminary studies of Earth broadcasts and internet signals, we have designed tests appropriate for human cognitive abilities. Something about the alien's tone bothered Olivia. You don't think much of humans, do you? Professor Zixthalin's head tilted slightly. We try not to form judgments before testing. However, our initial observations suggest that humans are less advanced than many concordat species. Your civilization still fights wars over resources and beliefs. You have barely begun to explore your own solar system. That doesn't mean we're stupid, Olivia said, feeling defensive. Intelligence takes many forms, the professor replied diplomatically. That is why we test rather than assume. Please take a position at the central platform. Olivia stepped up to the glass table. As soon as she did, it lit up with colors and three-dimensional shapes that hovered in the air above it. These are basic spatial reasoning puzzles, Professor Zixthalin explained. They have been calibrated for what we believe is challenging but achievable for humans. Take your time. The first phase alone may require several days to complete. With that, the alien stepped back behind a transparent barrier where several other aliens had gathered to watch. Olivia looked at the puzzles floating before her. They reminded her of the video games her younger brother played, the ones where you had to rotate objects to fit through differently shaped holes. She reached out hesitantly and found she could touch and manipulate the holographic shapes with her hands. She took a deep breath. She might be average on Earth, but here she represented all of humanity. She had to do her best. As she began working on the first puzzle, she didn't notice Professor Zixthalin watching her with all 6 eyes, already preparing notes on what he assumed would be a lengthy study of human limitations. Neither of them had any idea what was about to happen. Olivia's fingers moved quickly over the holographic shapes. The first puzzle was simple enough. She needed to arrange colored blocks to form a specific pattern. It was a lot like the games she played on her phone during boring lectures. Behind the clear barrier, Professor Zixthalin watched with his 6 eyes. Next to him stood Dr. Krell, an Arvanian scientist with gray skin and 4 arms that were currently crossed over his chest in a gesture of skepticism. This human specimen seems remarkably calm, Dr. Krell noted. Most species panic when first brought aboard. Humans are adaptable if nothing else, Professor Zixthalin replied, though I expect little from their cognitive abilities. The first set of puzzles is designed for juvenile Vexarians, our equivalent of their 8-year-olds. Dr. Krell made a snorting sound through his breathing slits. I still think you're overestimating them. I've analyzed their entertainment broadcasts. They spend hours watching others throw balls or driving in circles. We shall see, the professor said. I estimate she will complete the first puzzle in approximately 4 hours, if at all. But Olivia was already finishing the first puzzle. She had recognized that the pattern was a simple sequence based on color and position. As the final piece slid into place, a soft chime sounded, and a new puzzle appeared. The two alien scientists looked at each other. "A lucky guess," Dr. Krell said. "Or perhaps the system malfunctioned." Professor Zixthalen's head frills twitched in surprise. Let us observe further before drawing conclusions. The second puzzle involved rotating three-dimensional objects. To match specific shadows, Olivia smiled. This was exactly like a game her brother had forced her to play last summer. She moved her hands through the air, spinning the shapes and testing angles. Within 12 minutes, she had solved it. The third puzzle was more complex, involving predicting the movement of particles through a maze. Olivia frowned in concentration, watching the pattern. After a few false starts, she figured out the logic and completed it in 20 minutes. Professor Zixthalen was now leaning forward, all 6 eyes wide open. This was not what he had expected, not at all. "Check the calibration," he ordered a junior technician. "These results cannot be accurate." The technician ran a quick diagnostic. "All systems are functioning normally, Professor." By now, Olivia had completed 5 puzzles. She was enjoying herself. These tests were challenging but fun, and she liked the way the holographic interface responded to her movements. It was much more interesting than studying for her psychology exam. Word spread quickly through the research vessel. More aliens gathered behind the barrier to watch the human girl solve puzzles that should have taken days to complete. Some brought recording devices. Others made bets on when she would finally fail. After completing the 10th puzzle, Olivia stretched her arms and looked toward the barrier. "Can I get some water?" she called out. "And maybe a bathroom break?" Professor Zixthalen seemed startled by the request. He had been so focused on the unexpected results that he had forgotten about basic human needs. "Of course," he said, his voice coming through a speaker system. "Please step back from the platform." A section of the wall slid open, revealing a small room with facilities that looked somewhat like a human bathroom, though the fixtures were oddly shaped. A container of water waited on a shelf. While Olivia took her break, chaos erupted in the lith. "Observation room. This is impossible," Dr. Krell insisted. "She must be cheating somehow." "How could she cheat?" another scientist asked. "She has no devices, and the puzzles are generated randomly." Professor Zixthalen's head frills were now fully extended, a sign of extreme agitation in Vexarians. "We must increase the difficulty. Move directly to adult-level assessments." When Olivia returned, she found the holographic display had changed. Instead of simple shapes and patterns, she now faced complex mathematical equations and multi-dimensional objects. "We have adjusted the assessment to better challenge our abilities," Professor Zixthalen announced through the speaker. Olivia looked at the new puzzles with uncertainty. These seemed much harder. The first one showed what looked like a cube, but it kept folding and unfolding in ways that made her eyes hurt. "I'm not sure I understand this one," she admitted. "Simply predict where the highlighted point will be after." "The object completes its transformation," the professor explained, trying to keep the eagerness from his voice. Now they would see the human's limitations. Olivia stared at the shifting shape. It moved in a pattern, though a complex one. She closed her eyes for a moment, visualizing the movement in her mind. Then she opened them and reached out to touch the point where she thought the highlight would end up. A chime sounded. She had guessed correctly. Behind the barrier, Professor Zixthalen's assistant dropped a datapad with a clatter. The next puzzle involved predicting the outcome of a chemical reaction shown through colored dots and lines. Olivia had taken basic chemistry. She didn't recognize all the elements represented, but she could see how they were interacting. She made an educated guess. Another chime. Another correct answer. By now, the observation room was packed with aliens from all departments of the ship. News had spread that something extraordinary was happening in Testing Chamber 7. Increased to expert level. Professor Zix Thalen ordered, his voice tight. The display changed again. Now Olivia faced puzzles that even the professor found challenging. One showed a system of planets and moons, asking her to predict their positions after a certain time had passed. Olivia bit her lip. This was beyond her knowledge of physics. But as she watched the objects move, she noticed patterns. She couldn't calculate the exact orbits, but she could see relationships between the movements. She made her best guess. The chime sounded again. How? Is this possible? Dr. Krell whispered. These are problems our greatest minds struggle with. Professor Zix Thalen had no answer. His entire understanding of human intelligence was being rewritten before his eyes. After 2 hours, Olivia had completed 37 puzzles of increasing difficulty. She was tired but exhilarated. Each success gave her more confidence to tackle the next challenge. What she didn't know, what none of the watching aliens fully understood, was that human brains were uniquely adapted for certain types of pattern. Recognition. Millions of years of evolution had optimized humans to quickly identify patterns in complex environments, to make intuitive leaps, and to adapt rapidly to new challenges. While the aliens' minds excelled at methodical, sequential problem-solving, Olivia's brain could make connections they never considered. She couldn't always explain how she arrived at an answer sometimes. It just felt right, but her instincts were remarkably accurate. Professor Zix Thalen called for another break. He needed time to reconsider his entire approach. As Olivia drank more water, she wondered what all the commotion was about. From her perspective, she was just playing elaborate games. Challenging ones, yes, but nothing that seemed worthy of the excitement she could see among the aliens. Little did she know that her performance was sending shockwaves through the entire galactic concordat, challenging centuries of assumptions about intelligence throughout the universe, and the testing had only just begun. Professor Zix Thalen paced in the conference room, his 4 arms gesturing wildly as he spoke. Around the oval table sat 12 of the ship's most senior scientists, representing different species and disciplines. All eyes, regardless of number or placement, were fixed on the professor. "We must reconsider everything we thought we knew about human cognition," he said. "The specimen has completed tests in hours that take our brightest students weeks to solve." Dr. Krell, still skeptical, tapped his claws on the table. "One human is not a sufficient sample size. Perhaps she is an outlier, a genetic anomaly among her kind. Even if that were true, it would still challenge our understanding," argued Dr. Neary, a plant-based scientist whose leaves rustled with excitement. "No species has ever performed so far beyond our initial assessment." On a large screen at the end of the room, they could see Olivia resting in a comfortable chamber provided for her. She was examining a piece of alien fruit with curiosity. "What do we do next?" asked Chief Researcher Vool, whose gelatinous body rippled with each word. Professor Zix Thalen's head frills extended fully. "We escalate further. I propose we implement the quantum probability matrix tests." A murmur spread through the room. Those tests were typically reserved for the final examinations of the Concordat's most advanced students. "Is that ethical?" Dr. Neary asked. "The mental strain could be harmful to a species not accustomed to such complexity." "We will monitor her carefully," the professor assured them, "and stop immediately if we detect signs of distress. But I believe we have only begun to explore the capabilities of the human mind." The vote was unanimous. The testing would continue. Meanwhile, Olivia was enjoying a much-needed rest. The room they had given her was strange but comfortable. The bed adjusted to support her body perfectly, and the fruit she had been given tasted like a mix of strawberry and pineapple. She wondered how long she had been on the ship. It felt like hours, but without windows or a clock, It was hard to tell. She also wondered what her roommate would think when she didn't come back to their dorm. Would anyone even notice she was missing? The door slid open, and Professor Zixthalin entered, followed by a smaller alien with green skin and large, bulbous eyes. "Olivia Mason, this is Dr. Plex, our medical specialist," the professor explained. "Before we continue testing, he will examine you to ensure your health is not at risk." Dr. Plex approached with a handheld device that emitted a soft blue glow. He moved it over her body without touching her. "Fascinating," he said in a high-pitched voice. "Your brain is showing unusual activity patterns. The neural connections are forming and reforming at remarkable speeds." "Is that bad?" Olivia asked, suddenly worried. "Not at all," Dr. Plex assured her. "It appears to be normal for your species. We simply have never observed it so closely before." After the brief examination, Professor Zixthalin led Olivia back to the testing chamber. The room was now packed with alien observers. Some had to float near the ceiling to get a view. "We have prepared a new set of challenges," the professor explained. "These are considerably more advanced than the previous tests. Please do not feel discouraged if you find them difficult." Olivia nodded, though she felt a twinge of nervousness at the professor's tone. The holographic display activated, revealing what looked like a cube made of swirling lights. But as Olivia watched, she realized it wasn't a cube at all. It seemed to exist in more dimensions than she could comprehend, folding in on itself in impossible ways. "This is a quantum probability matrix," Professor Zixthalin explained. "You must predict which states are most likely to collapse into reality when observed." Olivia stared at the display, confused. "I don't understand what that means." "Simply put, identify which of these points will light up next based on the pattern you observe." Olivia watched as points of light blinked on and off within the strange structure. At first, it seemed completely random. But as she kept watching, she began to notice subtle patterns. Not in the lights themselves, but in the relationships between them. She pointed to a spot that hadn't lit up yet. That one. A moment later, it flashed bright. A collective gasp came from the observers. "Lucky guess," someone whispered. Olivia pointed to another spot. Now that one. It lit up, and that one next. Again, she was correct. Professor Zixthalin's 6 eyes blinked rapidly. This was impossible. The quantum probability matrix was designed to be unpredictable except through complex calculations. Yet this human was somehow seeing patterns that should be invisible to organic minds. What the aliens didn't understand was that Olivia wasn't calculating anything. Human brains evolved to recognize patterns, even in seemingly chaotic systems, to see faces in clouds, to hear messages in random sounds, to find meaning in the meaningless. This ability, which sometimes led humans to false conclusions, was now allowing Olivia to perceive connections that the aliens' more logical minds overlooked. For the next 2 hours, Olivia worked through increasingly complex quantum matrices. Sometimes she made mistakes, but her success rate was far beyond what should have been possible for any being without quantum computing capabilities. The news spread throughout the ship. Alien researchers abandoned their posts to come witness the phenomenon. Some even sent urgent messages to their home worlds. This human was doing something unprecedented. By the end of the session, Olivia was exhausted but exhilarated. The puzzles were challenging in a way that pushed her mind to its limits. Yet she found she could solve most of them if she trusted her instincts. Professor Zixthalin called for another break, and Olivia gratefully retreated to her rest chamber. As the door closed behind her, she heard the explosion of excited alien voices from the observation room. "What's the big deal?" she wondered. Aloud, "They're just puzzles." But for the Galactic Concordat, they were much more than puzzles. They were the foundation of their understanding of intelligence throughout the universe. And a simple human girl from Earth was forcing them to question everything they thought they knew. In the conference room, the debate had grown heated. "We must immediately revise our classification of Earth," insisted Dr. Neary. "Humans cannot be considered a developing species if they possess this level of cognitive function. One individual does not represent an entire species," Dr. Krell countered, though with less conviction than before. Professor Zixthalin silenced them with a gesture. "There is only one way to truly test the limits of human cognition," he said quietly. "You cannot mean ... Chief Researcher Voul's gelatinous body quivered. "Yes," the professor said. "Tomorrow, we will present Olivia Mason with the unsolvable problem." The room fell silent. The unsolvable problem had remained unresolved by any organic being in the Concordat for over 3 centuries. It was considered the ultimate test of intelligence, a problem so complex that it existed at the boundary of what was theoretically possible for a mind to comprehend. "If she even makes progress on it," Professor Zixthalin continued, "we will have to reconsider humanity's place in the galactic order." As the aliens dispersed to prepare for the next day's momentous test, Olivia slept peacefully, unaware that she was about to face a challenge that might change the destiny of her entire species. Morning arrived, though in the windowless rooms of the alien ship, Olivia only knew it was morning because Professor Zixthalin told her so. She had slept well in the strange but comfortable bed, and a breakfast of fruit and something like oatmeal had been provided for her dot. As she finished eating, the professor entered her chamber. His blue skin seemed a shade paler today, and his movements were stiff. "Olivia Mason," he said, his musical voice more formal than usual. "Today we wish to present you with a special challenge." "Or puzzles?" Olivia asked. Despite her initial fear, she was beginning to enjoy the tests. It pushed her mind in ways her college classes never had. "Not just any puzzle," the professor explained. "What you will face today is known throughout the Galactic Concordat as the unsolvable problem. It has remained unsolved by any organic being for over 300 years. Olivia's eyes widened. "And you want me to try it? Why? I'm not a genius or anything." Professor Zixthalin's head frills twitched. "Your performance thus far suggests otherwise. Your approach to problem-solving is unlike anything we have observed before." Olivia shrugged. "I just see patterns." "It's not that special." "Perhaps among humans it is not," the professor said. "But in the wider galaxy, such intuitive leaps are extremely rare. Most advanced species rely on methodical, sequential analysis." He led her back to the testing chamber. Today, the observation area was so crowded that aliens were pressed against the barrier, their various appendages and sensory organs creating a bizarre mosaic of shapes and colors. The holographic display in the center of the room was dark. "Ah." Hush fell over the crowd as Olivia took her position at the platform. "The unsolvable problem," Professor Zixthalin announced, "is a chaotic system prediction model with multiple interdependent variables. It requires the solver to predict the behavior of a system so complex that it appears random, yet is theoretically deterministic." Olivia nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure what that meant. "In simpler terms," the professor continued, seeing her confusion, "imagine trying to predict exactly where every drop of water in a waterfall will land, while accounting for wind, temperature, and the movements of every other drop." "That sounds impossible," Olivia said. "Hence the name," the professor replied with a gesture that might have been the alien equivalent of a smile. "No one expects you to solve it completely. Even making progress would be remarkable." The display activated, showing what looked like a swirling storm of colored particles. They moved in patterns so complex that looking at them made Olivia's head hurt. Numbers and symbols flashed around the edges, changing constantly. "Your task is to predict the state of the system at specific Future points, the professor explained. You may use any method you wish. Olivia stared at the chaotic display. Unlike the previous puzzles, this one seemed truly beyond her abilities. There were too many variables, too much happening at once. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling overwhelmed. The crowded room, the impossible task, the weight of representing humanity, it was all too much. I don't think I can do this, she said quietly. From behind the barrier, Dr. Krell made a sound that might have been satisfaction. As I predicted, the human has reached her limit. But Professor Zixthallen raised a hand for silence. Take your time, Olivia Mason. There is no rush. Olivia took a deep breath. Maybe she couldn't solve the whole thing, but she could at least try. She focused on one small section of the swirling particles, watching how they moved. After several minutes, she began to notice something. While she couldn't track individual particles, she could see larger patterns in their movements. It reminded her of watching flocks of birds back home. Each bird moved independently, yet the flock created beautiful flowing shapes. Can I simplify the display? She asked. Professor Zixthallen looked surprised. In what way? I want to see the overall flow, not the individual particles. After a brief discussion with the technicians, the professor nodded. The display changed, now showing flowing lines that represented the average movement of particles in each region. Olivia smiled. This was much easier to understand. She could see how the flows interacted, creating larger patterns that repeated over time. I think I see it now, she said. It's like weather patterns. You can't predict exactly where each raindrop will fall, but you can predict the general movement of storm systems. She began working with the display, tracking the flows and making predictions. To her surprise, many of her guesses were correct. Not all the system was still incredibly complex, but enough to make the watching aliens murmur in excitement. Hours passed. Olivia lost track of time, focused entirely on the problem. She developed a feel for the system's rhythms, for how one change would cascade through the entire model. Sometimes she made mistakes, but she learned from each one, refining her approach. What the aliens didn't realize was that Olivia was using a uniquely human approach. Rather than trying to calculate the exact position of each particle, an impossible task, she was looking for emergent patterns. Her brain evolved to recognize faces, to spot predators hiding in tall grass, to read emotions in subtle expressions, was perfectly suited to finding order within chaos. By the 8th hour, Olivia had achieved a prediction accuracy of 78%, far from perfect, but unprecedented for the unsolvable problem. The observation room was silent now. Every alien watching in awe as this human girl made progress on a problem that had stumped their greatest minds for centuries. Professor Zixthallen could hardly believe what he was seeing. His entire career had been built on studying intelligence throughout the galaxy. He had classified and ranked thousands of species based on their cognitive abilities. And now, this seemingly ordinary human was forcing him to question everything. When Olivia finally stepped back from the platform, exhausted but satisfied, the professor approached her. Remarkable, he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. Truly remarkable. Did I solve it? Olivia asked, wiping sweat from her forehead. No one can truly solve it completely, the professor explained. But you have made more progress than any organic being in recorded history. Olivia smiled tiredly. Cool, can I get some water? As she rested and rehydrated, the implications of her achievement spread throughout the ship. Emergency meetings were called. Communications were sent to the Concordat's central worlds. The classification of Earth and humans would need to be completely revised. Dr. Krell approached Professor Zixthallen in the corridor outside the testing chamber. The skeptical Arvanian seemed subdued. I was wrong, he admitted. "A human's performance is ... extraordinary." "It is more than that," the professor replied. "It is revolutionary. We have been measuring intelligence all wrong, Krell. We valued methodical, sequential processing because that is how our own minds work. But this human has shown us another kind of intelligence, entirely one based on intuition, pattern recognition, and creative leaps. What does this mean for the Concordat's hierarchy of species?" Dr. Krell asked. Professor Zix-Thalen's head frills extended fully. "It means there is no hierarchy. Only different types of minds, each with their own strengths and weaknesses." As the aliens debated the philosophical implications of Olivia's achievement, the human girl herself slept peacefully, unaware that she had just changed the course of galactic history. 1 week had passed since Olivia's remarkable achievement with the unsolvable problem. The Celestial Inquiry, once a quiet research vessel, now buzzed with activity. Aliens from across the galactic Concordat had arrived via faster-than-light, traveled to witness the human phenomenon for themselves. Olivia sat in a new chamber, larger and more comfortable than her previous accommodations. The walls displayed scenes from Earth forests, oceans, cities, making her feel less homesick. Professor Zix-Thalen had explained that they were taken from Earth's internet. The door slid open, and Professor Zix-Thalen entered. Over the past week, Olivia had learned to read his alien expressions better. Today, his head frills were partially extended, a sign of excitement tempered with formality. "Olivia Mason," he said, his musical voice warm. "The High Council of the Concordat has reached a decision regarding Earth." Olivia sat up straighter. "Is that good or bad?" "Very good," the professor assured her. "Based on your performance, humans will be offered immediate provisional membership in the Galactic Concordat, bypassing the usual centuries of observation." Olivia's eyes widened. "Just because of me? But I'm not special. I'm just an average student." Professor Zix-Thalen made a gesture that she had come to recognize as the alien equivalent of a laugh. "That is precisely what makes it so remarkable. If an average human can achieve what you did, then your species has extraordinary potential." He sat down across from her, his 6 eyes fixed on her face. "We have learned something important from you, Olivia Mason. Intelligence takes many forms across the galaxy. For too long, we measured other species by how similar their minds were to our own. We valued methodical processing and logical analysis because that is how our brains work. But humans think differently," Olivia said. "Yes, your minds make intuitive leaps, recognize patterns in chaos, and adapt quickly to new challenges. These abilities evolved from your species' history as prey animals who became predators, who learned to cooperate in complex social groups, who faced rapidly changing environments." Olivia had never thought about human thinking that way before. "So what happens now?" "First, we will return you to Earth, to the exact moment you were taken. For you, it will be as if no time has passed, though you will retain all memories of your time here." "Will anyone believe me?" Olivia asked. "That is not important," the professor said. "Soon, official representatives of the Concordat will make contact with Earth's governments. Your world will learn of its place in the wider galaxy. And then what?" Professor Zix-Thalen's head frills extended fully. "Then, Olivia Mason, the real work begins. The Concordat wishes to establish a joint research institute where humans and other species can collaborate. Your different ways of thinking, combined with our technologies, could solve problems that have stumped us for millennia." Olivia thought about this for a moment. "And you want me to be part of this?" "We would be honored if you would consider becoming the first human research partner in the Concordat's scientific division. Your unique insight into how human minds work would be invaluable." Olivia laughed. "I'm a psychology major with average grades. I'm not a scientist." "Perhaps by Earth standards," the professor said. But you have qualities that are rare and valuable in the wider galaxy, and we can teach you what you need to know about the sciences." Before Olivia could respond, another alien entered the room. This one was tall and slender, with iridescent skin that shifted colors as it moved. "Professor Zix Thalon, the preparations are complete," the new alien said. "The first official delegation to Earth is ready to depart." "Excellent," the professor replied. "Olivia Mason, this is Ambassador Lith. She will oversee the initial contact with your world's leaders." The ambassador bowed slightly. "It is an honor to meet you, Olivia Mason. Your achievement has caused quite a stir throughout the Concordat." Olivia felt her cheeks grow warm. "I just solved some puzzles." "You did much more than that," Ambassador Lith said. "You opened our eyes to a new form of intelligence. The implications are still unfolding." After the ambassador left, Professor Zix Thalon turned back to Olivia. "Before you return to Earth, would you like to see something remarkable?" Curious, Olivia nodded. The professor led her through corridors she hadn't seen before, eventually arriving at a massive chamber with a transparent ceiling. Above them stretched the stars, more brilliant and numerous than Olivia had ever seen from Earth. "This is the observation deck," Professor Zix Thalon explained. "And that," he pointed to a small blue-green sphere hanging in the darkness, "is your home." Olivia gasped. Earth looked so small, so fragile from this distance. Tears filled her eyes as she realized how far she had traveled and how much had changed because of her. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Yes," the professor agreed. "And filled with minds like yours minds that see the universe in ways we never imagined. The Concordat has much to learn from humanity." Later that day, Olivia stood in the transport chamber, ready to return home. Professor Zix Thalon and several other aliens who had become something like friends over the past week had come to say goodbye. "Remember," the professor said, "to you and your world, it will be as if only moments have passed. But in those moments, everything has changed." Olivia nodded. "Will I see you again?" "Very soon," he promised. "I have requested to lead the scientific exchange program with Earth. There is much more for us to learn from each other." Dr. Krell, who had been so skeptical at first, stepped forward. "I was wrong about humans," he admitted. "Your species has much to offer the galaxy. Just don't expect all of us to be good at puzzles," Olivia said with a smile. "We're all different." "That diversity is your greatest strength," Professor Zix Thalon said, "a lesson the Concordat needed to learn." As the transport energies began to swirl around her, Olivia took one last look at the aliens who had changed her life. They no longer seemed strange or frightening, just different bodies, different minds, different ways of seeing. The universe dot in a flash of blue light. She was back in the university library. Her psychology textbook lay open before her, exactly as she had left it. The clock on the wall showed it was still 11:48 p.m. Olivia took a deep breath and smiled. In a few minutes, humanity would learn it wasn't alone in the universe. And she, an average college student with no special talents, had helped make it happen. All because she saw patterns that others missed. Outside the library windows, a soft blue light began to glow.